Hello, hello, everyone. We're meeting again for the Live Your Dharma interview in English again today with a very, very special guest, Neeta Bhushan, that I'm so honored to welcome on this interview today. So we'll wait for her to... Hello, hello. It's gonna be in English. Je fais un petit aparté. Ça sera à nouveau une interview en anglais. J'espérais que les sous-titres soient disponibles en français sur YouTube, mais c'est pas le cas, j'ai l'impression. Donc, je m'en excuse d'avance. Et puis, ben voilà, c'est l'occasion soit de faire pause et d'essayer de comprendre ce qui se dit et de sortir votre vieux dico d'anglais. Et voilà. Et puis sinon, dans les semaines à venir, il y aura aussi des interviews à nouveau en français. Donc, je vais attendre Neeta pour ce soir. Et voilà, je me réjouis. Je me réjouis. Merci à ceux qui sont là pour le moment. Let's wait for Neeta to join us live. À ceux qui sont là en français pour le moment. Ah, ça y est, she's live. All right. Hey, Neeta. You need to ask for to join the live. Ah, there you go. Hello, hello.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah, whatever time it is, wherever we are. I know it's morning for you. It's almost nighttime for me. Thank you so much for accepting almost 2 years ago, even more than that. No, yeah, maybe 1.5 years ago to be on this live.
Well, I love someone who is persistent. I want to honor that in you, and I want to honor that in you from when we first met. So thank you.
Yeah. So I was thinking back I'm about to explain to everybody how I met you, as I was part of the first batch of students of the DCI Dharma Coaching Institute back in 2021. And I loved absolutely every minute of it. I had been on the yogic path for many years. I had done a little bit of coaching, but this was like the perfect combination of yoga and Dharma and coaching, and it was just like such a transformative training. So I just wanted to put that out there. And another little story, and then it'll be all about
you. No, it's all good. I'm actually, I know you love tea, and I'm getting my tea ready for us too for amazing conversation.
Perfect. So I don't know if you remember the first batch, we had a very long business module at the end of the program that lasted at least 5 or 6 hours.
Oh yeah.
And it was on a Sunday night from like 5 p.m. to 11 for me. And after like about 4 hours or so, Sahara was about to dive into how to have your own podcast. And I was like, I'll never have a podcast. I need to move around. I'll be sitting on my computer for like 4 hours. Let me have a shower and I'll come back for the end of the training. And a couple of days later, I'm here thinking, okay, how can I introduce that beautiful concept of Dharma to my community? Mm-hmm. And I have this download and I'm like, oh, I know it's not about explaining with like words and to make it like a mental understanding, but it's about sharing life stories, and interview people who are living their Dharma. Sure. And so obviously I went back to the podcast replay.
Oh, you did? Great.
But yeah, so yeah, that was just a little story, and I've run like 50 episodes, 50 interviews already, mostly in French.
Amazing.
And I'm so excited to opening up to like English speakers, because there's so many inspiring people out there.
So amazing. So glad you did that. I'm so glad. I think that many times we're just so afraid of our bigness and how much magic and the magnitude that we can create. So I just want to honor you, love, because from you going a couple of years ago, literally it's like 2 years ago now, to where you are and almost 60 episodes in, from saying that's not really for me. I think we've done our job.
Mhm. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so 2 years ago you told me, hey, I'm in the middle of writing a book, but as soon as I'm done, we could do the interview. And here you are promoting the book like day in, day out. There it is. That sucked, now what? And we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so I guess let's dive right in. Could you please, for the people who maybe don't know you, introduce yourself? So Neeta, who are you? What do you do? And I'm gonna ask you, why do you do what you do?
Oh man. Yes. Oh gosh, this is such a great question. And hi everyone who I have not met, and maybe you're popping over on this Monday morning, evening, afternoon. I'm so grateful that we get to do this live. I'm Dr. Neeta Bhushan, and I'm the author of this amazing new magical book called How to Embrace the Joy in Chaos and Find Magic in the Mess. Every time I say this, somebody's like, I gotta see the book, so I'm going to show you the book. Mm-hmm. Here it is, because sometimes it looks really weird backwards, but and this actually was inspired. This is my fourth book, but my first one with a traditional publisher, which is why this book baby means so much to me. It has been literally a labor of love for like the past 4 years, honestly, in motherhood, and I talk all about, either you are in your creative muse where you want to create something, but then you feel and you kind of judge yourself of like, oh, wow, motherhood is crazy. How am I going to have time? And then we started this new venture, and this is what, you're talking about. And we started Dharma Coaching Institute. So I'm the co-founder of that with my dear friend Sahar Rose, and you were in the very first batch. And so I'm such an advocate of emotional resilience and mental health and emotional advocacy. And I've had a lot of my own sucky moments, actually. And so much so that I didn't think I would be writing this book, but I guess I am the person to write this book. I have gone through a ton of loss, losing most of my immediate family before I was 19 years old. And really having to kind of connect all of the dots of my Dharma to really come back to myself. And that meant going through really bad, sucky relationship situations, going through a conventional job of an amazing, being an amazing cosmetic dentist, but thinking that was, these were all these shiny objects that I thought I needed to chase. Until I found myself on December 31st, 2011, asking myself, why, and how did I get into this? Because from the outside, it looked like I had all of the bells and whistles of success. But on the inside, I was struggling. I was struggling mentally. I was struggling emotionally. And honestly, I was struggling physically. I was in a toxic relationship, in an abusive relationship. And that was the first day, December 31st, that I would actually admit my reality. And so when we talk about Dharma, when we talk about following your truth, your North Star, your purpose, whatever flavor you want to add that feels resonant and really juicy for you, I had to reconcile with who I was then to who I was becoming. And that took a lot of courage. It took a lot of bravery to go into what I really was honestly scared of going through, and having to meet those difficult aspects of myself that I wanted to bury, I wanted to hide, I wanted to not face front, face to face. And it's so easy to pacify. It's so easy to shove under a rug. It's so easy to pretend things never happen. But when the same kinds of situations, circumstances happen, then you're forced to say, okay, well, what's the now what piece? What's that now what going to look like? Because you've already said, all right, this sucked, or that sucked, meaning that happened in the past tense, that we are no longer going to sit in the suck, and we're going to make different choices. And for me, that different choice was unraveling, unlearning, doing the deep work, diving into different kinds of certifications and meditations and journeys, and spending time with healers and coaches, and really getting my hands and my fingers dirty into the depths of what I was really truly craving. And that was love, that was self-love, that was acceptance, and also compassion for myself. And so often for us, we judge ourselves. We are the worst critics of ourselves. We don't give ourselves grace because we should be at a different spot. We should have done this, or we should have, taken that high road, and we didn't. But we are where we are now. And that has led me to creating this incredible book. It has already won 3 awards, the Book Excellence Award, Literary Titan Award, and the Mom's Choice Awards. It has been #1 in stress management on Amazon, and literally it's not even been out for a week. So I'm so glad we're talking to you about all of this, and how sometimes our painful moments can really lead to our Dharma if we're actually open to it. And most of the time we're not. And most of the time, kind of like, you experience it, you're like, no, I'm never going to do a podcast. But then it kept coming up, and here we are. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think I can ever write a book. I was so afraid of public speaking, because I felt like, as a doctor or a dentist, I felt like if I don't know the right answer, if I haven't been studying a subject for a really long time, then who am I to write? Then who am I to put things together? And I didn't realize that, well, my suckiest moments that I wanted to hide and bury and suppress and squash down were actually my gifts. And if that is anything to take from our conversation, that where you are right now, your mess can literally turn into your magic. The chaos of your life, if you allow it to, can really turn into something so beautiful and so joyful. And that's where we are today.
Yes. Thank you so much for such a nice roundabout introduction. I know about some part of your life stories, at least. So I know you had your share of obstacles and struggles, and it's so amazing. Like, you are the embodiment of the lotus flower that comes out of the mud. And I think we all have that capacity. And one quote that I always end up sharing almost every single interview, but it made such a difference in my life. And it's almost like with DCI, I got a better understanding of that, is life never gives you more than you can take. Meaning every struggle, every challenges, every obstacle that you are met with, it just means that you have the tools to pass it. But for that, you have to go through it. And that's how you get to understand your resilience and your strength and your resources.
Through it.
Right,
I love what you said about that, because I think a lot of times it's easy, even when we're on our spiritual path, even when we're on our journey, to say, oh, I should know better. I know better. I'm just gonna meditate, or I'm just gonna go into my next journaling exercise, and I'm just gonna process it. And so we bypass what we think, and we judge the emotions that are coming up. Oh, I shouldn't feel jealous, or oh, I shouldn't feel angry that this happened. Well, instead, why not we just say the mantra, well, that sucked. Okay, now what am I going to do? And literally, I think this book has gotten so much steam because we're giving permission for people to actually suck. Doesn't matter where you are on your spiritual journey, on your yogic path, wherever you are. I think we've got to accept that. And I think a lot of times, especially for women, we're so used to kind of judging and saying, well, I should know better. I actually read all of those books. And sometimes it may take, time to process where we're at, and really to embrace, I kind of talk about the duality, the opposing paradox many times that we have around emotions, and how it's so beautiful to really allow. And sometimes it is messy, sometimes it is chaotic, sometimes it's not really what we anticipated, and sometimes it can take you into a dark hole, and you might get stuck. And I feel like, what we talk about in the book are so many different avenues to actually say yes to the, you know, the hard times and the setbacks and the challenges that come our way. Because when we break down, we're kind of actually starting to build anew, whether it's, you know, our neural pathways, because we're saying yes to something that scares us, or we're saying yes to new relationships, new opportunities that scare us. We're literally breaking down, but we're rebuilding new neural pathways so that we can actually do those things that are really piquing our interest, but we're kind of afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 It kind of opens up the topic of comfort almost. We're so used to like everything being comfortable, and we want everything to feel good all the time. And so I love that it's acknowledging that, you know, it's almost like that yin yang. You can't have the good without the bad part.
Yes.
And yeah, instead of victimize when something bad, negative, challenging happen, turn it into like a stepping stone for you to learn something through it. But it's one thing to say it, and obviously it's never easy when you're right in the middle of it. So I love that you came up with, I'm sure, tons of like exercise and modalities to go through that challenge, and see the light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because a lot of times it's easy to be in the victim mode. It's easy to be in our victim spiral because, you know, the same thing keeps happening, or you've attracted, you know, the wrong types of relationships. I know for myself, because I was so desiring and wanting to recreate a family. I mean, I'd lost my mom, I'd lost my dad, I lost my brother before I was 19. So in my love life, I was actually holding on to these relationships because at the core of it, if I was actually open to it, I was so afraid of being alone. I hadn't really done the work at that stage to say, actually, ooh, that does not feel good. And I do not want to feel that. Therefore, I'm going to hold on to these relationships with emotionally unavailable people, so that I could actually finally learn self-love at its core. And I think a lot of times it's so easy to blame the other person, and it's so easy to blame, oh gosh, I keep attracting cheaters, or I keep attracting liars, or I keep attracting dishonest people, etc. We make those stories in our minds. But one part of, you know, that suck now what, in part 2 of the book, I talk about 4 pillars to build your unshakable resilience, to build your audacious resilience. And the audacity means that we're actually going to take personal responsibility. And I know this is like very triggering when I talk about this, but hear me out. And so the reason why personal responsibility is so important is because we start to kind of see, well, how did we play a role in that? And what is it that we actually need to heal? And that's the beauty of it. That's the magic of it. And that's really one of the biggest tools. And how do you actually do that? Well, taking personal responsibility means we have to look at the underbelly. And one of the pillars in order to actually do that and strengthen and cultivate that for you is cultivating that radical self-awareness, your RSA. So it could look like saying no to friendships or invites if it doesn't really resonate with you, or saying yes even though it kind of maybe scares you because you know you're going to grow as a result of going to this networking thing. And I think that is that balance. Again, it's the paradox of emotions, right? We can feel curious yet skeptical. We can feel reserved yet open to trying something new. And I think that when we actually lean into the discomfort of that, that's when we actually grow. But in order to do that, we have to be okay with checking in with our RSA, our radical self-awareness, to even have the wherewithal, the consciousness to actually say yes when things are scary and things are uncertain, because we all want it to be easy. And there's a difference between ease and easy. And I think that there is that distinction between ease and easy. With ease, you're actually saying yes to doing uncomfortable things, but you're not judging yourself if it doesn't go a certain way. You're surrendering in that way. Doing things that are easy is just choosing things that are not going to come with its challenges. And that's one way of looking at it. But I would invite people to actually lean into the discomfort with ease.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's really about expanding your comfort zone, yet staying listening, attuned to your own body. And I love what you're talking about. Something that reminds me what yoga taught me, which is literally paying attention to the language of the body, you know, the somatic language. Because I remember so many times after a few years of practice where some decisions I had to make made so much sense on paper, and my whole body was like contracting.
Yeah.
But you have to learn to listen, because it's so subtle. I'm doing this, but it's very subtle. Or on the opposite, you know, something that sounds like crazy on paper, and you're like, no, and your whole body, your whole heart is like blasting open. And I've really after I actually used to live in New York for 10 years working in the marketing. That's why when I saw your video on Times Square with the billboard, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I was so empty inside. So I resonate a lot with some part of your story. And the day I quit my corporate job and I went to India for 6 months by myself, and from that day on, I literally just started making decision with my RSA. I didn't call it that way, but that's really what it is. And I started like just following the impulse, and when my body was leading me to, really, rather than my head. But you're so right. It's like a muscle. It's like the awareness muscle. You have to start paying attention to either go one way, and I like the word flow, really, you know, and to me, living your Dharma, it's about being in that flow, in that kriya. And it, like you said, it doesn't mean it's simple. It doesn't mean it's easy every day. It just means that, you know, there's you feel alive, basically, when you're in that state.
Yes.
Of alignment.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you brought up kriya, because that is one of the foremost things that we can actually, you know, make peace with and really embody when we're going through our journey, when we're going through kind of healing out something that didn't go our way. And wow, I didn't realize New York for 10 years is how amazing full circle that it's become.
Yeah. So to come back to your life story, you already shared that you lost a lot of your family members when you were a teenager, really, or a very young adult, and you went into that dentistry career thinking it was like the best thing, and left you feeling inside empty inside, basically. That's if I'm rewording properly. And then being in an abusive marriage. So that's clearly, you had your share of obstacles and challenges. And
I did.
Would you say that you can could you feel grateful almost nowadays for all these things to have happened, because in a way they made you who you are today?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I wouldn't have written this book if all of those things didn't happen on this incredible journey. And hi, Nicholas. Hi, Moon Kufio. How are you? Yeah, I think that a lot of times, you know, in the first part of the book, I actually talk about the magical moment of suck. And in the magical moment of suck, it's actually, you know, I talk about, you know, being human 101. And I think a lot of times we can deny our humanity in a lot of the things that happen to us. And I think for the first, you know, few decades of my life, I was in that victim spiral. I did say, why me? Why is this happening? What is going on? Like, why? I mean, I can kind of make a joke around it now. Like, why is everyone dying around me? And I really wanted to even create the title, That Sucked, Now What? To introduce levity, that many times it doesn't have to be so hard and so serious and so just like heavy around when we're processing through loss, through grief, through sucky moments. And believe me, I've been through a lot of that darkness to actually come out on the other side, to then say, okay, wow, we can actually go through a different approach. Because I think it denies us of trying to experience all the different range of emotions, and that we have to be said. I remember when I was going through, you know, healing from the loss of my brother, because that was so sudden. And I remember just our family just going through shock. I was about 17. I was a senior in high school, and it was right after my mom passed, a year later. And so that was a really, really hard time for my family. It was, I mean, only a couple of years since I've been able to talk about that really, without fully breaking down, because that was such a pivotal moment. But I remember, you know, that I still had crushes on boys. You know, I still was able to go to the mall with my friends when I could, but there was this shame around, okay, am I supposed to have fun? Like, am I, you know, and I remembered like, oh, are we supposed to be laughing right now? And I think that many times when you are going through a season of funk, we kind of judge ourselves for actually feeling the gravity of our emotions. And I haven't been able to really fully embrace it as much as when I got into motherhood. So fast forward in the story, I did find love again about 6 years after, actually about 4 years after we had met. Couple years before that, but really it was, I mean, it was so beautiful in so many ways. And I think and then we actually started a family shortly after that. And so for anybody who is in funk right now, know that, you know, magic is coming your way. Know that there is something even better that is making its way towards you if you allow it, if you're open to it, and if you're honestly doing the work. And with this book, it actually comes with a 44-page digital guidebook where it's completely free. And it actually, we go through a lot of what I talk about in the book. It's color coded because I wanted to make sure that, especially if you're going through navigating a funky time, that you are able to also process that with ease, with grace, with compassion. And, you know, just remembering some of our suckiest moments give rise to our next chapter, our becoming, what we're meant to be doing in the world. And I think that when I read, I remember so vividly saying, you know what, I think it's time. Like I loved actually creating a company from nothing, from scratch, being able to build a community as a cosmetic dentist when I was one of the few that like graduated from school, didn't know what she was doing, and just said, all right, here we are. Didn't have a business background. And then I started this company. And then but then I knew when it was time. I knew that my heart wasn't fully into it. I was way more interested in getting people together and building a team. And obviously it's what I do, you know, in so many other arenas. And so keeping that skill set, keeping that superpower, but then changing modalities, as we talk about even in DCI, what's that core, you know, archetype in DCI? We talk about, well, you know, sometimes there's a mixture of a few. I know for myself, I'm a nurturer, I'm a teacher, I'm a researcher. And so combining all, and I think you are too, and I think combining all of those things, you know, you can then go into any different industry, whether it's education, whether it's, you know, teaching, whether it's podcasting, and really then be able to shine your gifts in that way that's so profound. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And I think so often you know, we get caught up in like, oh, I'm not going to go to law school, or I failed my law exam, or I don't really like being a dentist. And it's not like I didn't like that. I loved, you know, the possibility of other things even more. And when you lean into your superpower, you'll know what that is for you, kind of like what everyone is talking about at DCI. But you have to actually recognize some of those sucky moments so that it kind of gives you the road, the pillars to actually, and the breadcrumbs to what your next chapter is.
Right. Yeah, there's so much to learn in a sucky moment. And even you talking about a job, when you're in a job that doesn't feel aligned anymore, at least it's teaching you that you no longer want to do that. And this is already such a big learning, and something really important to help you redirect the cursor of where you want your next trajectory to be. I love that you almost like going faster than I get to ask the questions, but you talked about you know, miracles, and I don't know if you use the word synchronicity, but that's always something I love to talk about in those interviews, because I so firmly believe that, because I experienced it myself, that once you allow your heart to lead the way, really, and you understand that those sucky moments were not there to like crush you, but to awaken you. I think I read that quote a few days ago, and I thought it was beautiful. There's some kind of magic that really happened in life. It's almost like a dance between you and life starts to respond to your actions, and it starts to get flowy, and you meet the right person at the right time, and opportunities come your way, and it's just so beautiful. So is there any life story, like your own synchronicities that you've been through? You I guess maybe meeting Ajit was one of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, any major synchronicities or small ones too, because I feel like a lot of time when I've been running those interviews, people have been telling me there's synchronicities every day. Like when you're really in that state of flow, synchronicity becomes the norm and not the exception.
Oh my gosh. Well, yes, I mean, I met Ajit I met Ajit, I think 9 years ago. Yes, it was about 9 years ago, 2013. So it was a year after I got divorced. And
Okay.
And it was interesting because I was saying yes, and one of the things where when you build your bounce factor, I have you do an exercise on saying yes to things that scare you, and building your good stress, and activating your good stress. Well, one of the things I said yes to was going to a very different networking event, and it was in a different country altogether. Well, lo and behold, Ajit happened to be there, and we were at the same event, but I was going through my divorce, so I was like not interested in anybody, and I was focused on my own healing. He had just gotten married at the time, and so, you know, our paths weren't meant to cross at that time, but the seed was dropped. And so when you go to these types of events, you're kind of like, all right, you kind of know each other because you're in this kind of event. Well, a year later, I ended up going to Burning Man, and I would meet his co-founder as well. And then we all became really good friends. 6 months after that, I went over to Kuala Lumpur, where Ajit was living, and I was starting to do research on my very first book. And it ended up that Ajit was going through his breakup, and we wouldn't meet then again, but we would be in the same country. And then a year after that, I was actually speaking at a conference in India, and so was he. And that's where we finally actually connected. So the universe was kind of like ping-ponging us around different places around the world, not in the US, until we actually met again in India. And that's kind of, you know, his lineage, my dad's lineage. So it was very synchronistic.
Oh, wow.
It almost was as if the breadcrumbs were just making its way. And yeah, to even think about it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just magical. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on, love. I have to get to another interview right now. This was
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so amazing to have that conversation. Maybe just one last piece of advice for people listening, even though you shared a lot already.
Yeah, don't be afraid to suck at something new. Utilize your courage of bravery, your strength. It's what I talk about on our podcast on the Brave Table. And I think this book gives you permission to be able to be brave, to suck and not have it all together, and to actually enjoy the process and embrace your humanity while you're at it. So much love.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you.
Go
thank
ahead
you.
and grab the book.
Bye. That sucked. Now what? Buy the book.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.